Content warnings for this episode of Sekiro. Blood, gore, bright flashes, loud noises, fire, burning, gunshots, and explosions. Please be aware. And now, on to the episode. Hello there, and welcome back to Let's Play Sekiro, Historical Lorethrough. For reference again, the historical lore-through simply means I'm going through the game, doing it as a Let's Play full of historical information and basically examinations of the lore in Sekiro. You can often find sources in the descriptions for the video. I like to put on screen various images with picture-in-picture and put citations and basically references for what they are, the context of them, where you can find them, where they come from. I make sure to cite anything that comes from somebody else and to source them. Giving people credit is very important to me. That said, as well, this episode is going to be pretty long. I might put time codes up here. I might not. Depends if I remember to or think it is necessary. If so, they'll go up roughly around here, and you can go to the part of the video to find whatever it is you want to see. Right there, I was using the puppet ninjutsu to make the chained ogre fight the Interior Ministry forces to show that off. Just another close examination of them and their armor. I've talked about it to death, probably. I think in Thread, I went over the different types of armor that were used in these periods in Japan. I talked about the older armor more, the Oyuroi. This is more of the modern armor. The Oyuroi is more so what you would see on the Okami in Fountainhead. I talked about the gear of these soldiers. I've gone into pretty much everything. At least regarding the armor and equipment they're going to be having and showing. So you might be wondering why I'm still in the outskirts. There shouldn't be anything over here. This was where we fought General Kawarada. General Naomori Kawarada at the beginning of the game, which is a name I actually do remember. I remember many of the mini-bosses' names. Jinzuke Saze. I remember General Tenzin Yamauchi. Leader Shigenori Yamauchi. Yamauchi is a very common last name of characters in this game, seemingly those around the Harada stuff. Also, what's going on here? There's giant flaming claw marks? This area is wrecked. The Interior Ministry seems devastated. Also, because I puppeted him, he came over and attacked them. And that is one of the Interior Ministry samurai. They're really dangerous. Not these kettle-helmed Ashigaru, that one with the kabuto. He will hit really hard. I can't remember either if this was filmed on New Game Plus 7. I can't actually remember for this footage. So if I get hit hard and take a ton of damage, that's why. Here is one who is dying that we can actually talk to and find out what's going on. And you can see on his helm the Mon of the Interior Ministry, as well as on his chest. Looking more closely at the sort of splinter armor. Well, that was rather ominous. A lot of fire around here, a lot of burning and pain. This is not your standard idol made by the sculptor. There's something a bit different about it. You can't rest at it like normal. Instead, when you sit at it, you will be teleported to the flames of hatred. Now, as a heads up, the idol on this end you can actually rest at and will function like a regular one. Oftentimes people think this will teleport you back, so they try to do this entire area without resting at this idol here, which can be rather frustrating. Here we find some sort of gigantic creature. It's very hairy. You could call it orangutan-like almost. It's very red, fiery. It is fighting the forces of the Interior Ministry. It's unleashing fire while doing so, and releasing the flames of hatred. So as I mentioned, we can actually rest at this idol perfectly fine. I probably don't have to hide it. It wouldn't be a spoiler to just point out this is the Demon of Hatred boss fight. I timed that pretty well. I actually didn't time that intentionally right there. I just happened to be speaking when that reached that point. So that's fun. This is a sort of secret-ish boss. Not technically, most people know about it, but it's really out of the way and optional. So I'm going to be showing you how to fight the Demon of Hatred, what it is, going into the story of it. First, we'll get to the actual fight proper, techniques for it, showing off various attacks, how to counter them. Here I'm showing off Sabimaru versus it. Sabimaru is better against bosses that deflect and will guard a lot. Usually these big hit point sponges aren't actually that susceptible to Sabimaru. Some are even immune to it. You don't really want to try to poison Demon of Hatred. It's really not worth it. It has so much health. Demon of Hatred is a war of attrition, basically. You're going to be fighting it for a very long time. As I show here, the poison just is not worth it. This is sped up footage. Right here you can see this is how much one poison does over its time limit. Barely anything. You're not really focusing on posture break until the boss is at pretty low vitality. Mostly you want to focus on vitality. Here I'm trying to show off what Flame Vent does on Demon of Hatred, which is effectively nothing. It is a monster of fire and is seemingly immune to fire. Also, you can dodge through that explosion. I'll get into that more later. I show off the attacks a bit more. Here, I just wanted you to understand how to do that. And yes, I did duck under that swing using the Flame Vent, because you duck down as you charge it while rushing forward. A bit fun, ain't it? You can use it to dodge backwards like that too, as I showed in the previous episode. Doesn't work on a charging sweep as well. If you aim it to the side, I guess you could, but not your best use of resources right there. Basically just showing, definitely don't use Flame Vent on Demon of Hatred. Divine Abduction, you could technically find cases where this is useful. You could spin him around when he's going to do something dangerous, or to hit him in the back a bunch, if you just need the opportunity. But it's really not worth it. In general, you don't want to use this on bosses. You can use it to get in some free hits from behind. That's about it. If you use Living Force on the Divine Abduction, of course, you'll put Divine Abduction on your blade, and then when you hit it, you spin it. Mistraven has some uses. It's not too bad. The main problem is you don't want to use it on any fire attacks. The way Mistraven works, the status ailment still goes through. That's why you're able to lightning reversal using it. So against poison and fire and terror, you really don't want to use Mistraven. You'll still be getting the status effects. Especially terror, you don't want to use Mistraven then instantly die to terror. And here I'm showing off again. Firecracker doesn't seem to do anything to him. Purple might, if you can break the posture faster. I'm going to be showing off some cheese with the axe, showing off some axe damage comparisons. The first few hits are what you want to look at. In general, you really want to just use Yasha with the axe. Divine Confetti doesn't really seem to add much, if anything, here. It does for Sabimaru, though Sabimaru is not good for this fight. For others, if enemies are guarding, it will add chip damage, which is quite nice. You can skip an entire phase of Demon of Hatred by using the axe. What you want to do is you want to, at the start, get some hits in with the axe. Usually you want to do One normal hit, one spin, and then finish off and then do your follow-up. Dodge behind, you can use Malcontent to stun Demon of Hatred, which I'll also be showing off. Then, while Demon of Hatred is stunned, use the axe again. In between these, you're going to want to use the Tanto to get more emblems, but you'll be able to kill an entire phase of Demon of Hatred that way. That might seem like a big investment for a single phase on a boss, but Demon of Hatred, if you're playing it perfectly, is like a 6 to 8 minute fight. That's if you're playing it perfectly. If you're doing some sort of overpowered nonsense and cheese, it can go even faster than that. There's also an instant kill for this boss as a cheese. It's the same one that you do for Gyobu because this is the same arena. I will show that off in a later episode. Here I'm showing off the cheese method with the axe. Malcontent right there, of course, to stun it long enough to get some hits in. And there we go. That is one phase skip. People like to use this for last phase. I think second phase is the one that seems to last the longest, and the longer you're around, the more dangerous he is. Shuriken is not worth it. I would not recommend trying to Shuriken him when he jumps up. Definitely, I barely even noticed the posture bar move, and it almost immediately went down. Now, Mortal Draw is pretty good. You, of course, are going to have a limited number of full power uses of it, and if you have the empowered version, that's much stronger. Additionally, you can use Ashina Cross, which is very fitting. Ashina Cross does decent damage. It's not really something you're going to want to focus on, but you can do it. It does damage. Here is the Demon of Hatred boss fight proper. I didn't show off every single tool that's available here. I didn't actually get into the spear. It's not very good for this fight, to be frank. Now, at the start of the fight with the Demon of Hatred, it will always do that sort of sumo stance. I believe it's also used in theater. For the start of the fight, you can get some hits off. Stomps are a pretty common attack that Demon of Hatred will use. You can simply run away from them, or you can deflect them, or guard them. This head slam has two different variations of it. He has a sort of 3-hit combo one, which you just need to time to deflect. You can also just walk or run backwards away from it. You don't want to dodge through these sort of slam downs. For his normal attacks, they have like a ground pound effect that can hit you. This, though, is the jump up, fall down explosion. You can dodge through the initial explosion, but you don't want to be at the landing zone. It will deal fire damage, so it'll deal chip damage if you deflect it. You can dodge through the first. The wave after you typically want to deflect if you're going to do that. The simplest way to do this, though, is to jump and then grapple to him. As well, you can use the loaded umbrella. You want to use the Suzaku form so that you can get the fire block and deflect, so you won't take chip damage. He will do a sort of running sweep along the ground. Wherever he goes, he's going to run away and then do a few attacks. During the first phase, he's going to throw these fireballs. He can also summon up sculptures, but that's a bit rare in the first phase. Normally he'll throw the fireballs. He has there will be a first wave of them, and then there's a second that can happen if you've kept going. If you deflect these, they'll deal fire damage, so chip damage through a deflect or guard. You can run under them if you time it right. If you run at him too quickly, he'll immediately throw the fire. You have to sort of time it so that he's doing his stance from when he spins around after running past you. That way, he will throw them as you're getting closer. You can dodge at the end or do a running slide to more easily get under them. This is another combo. You need to dodge the first hit because it is fire. He also has these stomps right here. Again, you can dodge from left to right to get between them, but you can just safely deflect them. Deflecting is the best option when it comes to his non-fire attacks. The fire attacks, of course, you're going to want to use the umbrella or dodge through. Here I show running under the fire. Now, you can't actually iframe right through that fire. It has a big explosive hit. This whip, however, you can iframe through. You can deflect it, you can just dodge through it though, that's usually the best option. If you jump, it actually targets more towards the ground. It's not a sweep, but you can jump over the first 2 hits. The third will be a slam. You can deflect it, you can use the umbrella, but I like to dodge through it. It has a weird timing to the dodge. You actually will feel like you're dodging a little bit early, but that's the right timing. When he's doing those, he is often very open. You can run up and get some hits in. Whenever possible, you want to get hits in. When he's doing the charging sweep, I like to jump up and hit him with my sword in the air. It gets some hits in. Jumping off of him for the posture damage is generally not really that useful there unless he's on the last bit of posture. For this jump up and smash down, I advise just running behind him. If you're anywhere in front of him that can hit, it has a large area of effect, but when you're close to him or behind him, it'll often just miss. If you're behind him, you're pretty safe. So for the timing on this, you want to dodge through the first hit, deflect or dodge through the next 2 hits, and then dodge to the 4th. The first and the 4th are fire hits. The second is with his firearm, but does not do fire damage, so you can deflect it just fine. Or no, it is, no, that is right. That one is the fire. Then the third hit is him stomping down. You really want to deflect that one for the best option. And then the 4th will be fire. After you dodge through the fire, actually, it's kind of hard to time it to hit him while you're ending the dodge, because his leg will be up, so you'll actually go under it. This is second phase. This is when he has a new move when he runs away. He will lift up and do the whip slam down, but it will have a large trail of fire. Simply strafe left or right directly, and jump as it's coming down to avoid getting hit by the fire, then grapple to him. It's honestly not that hard to avoid. I have had some weird issues with it just completely missing me even when I stand still. There were a couple times I was trying to stand still to test deflecting it, and it just didn't hit me at all. The fire landed all around me and nothing. Whenever you do a grapple to the Demon of Hatred, be wary of going for any hits. You can get 1 in safely. It's possible to get in 2 or more, but 1 is safe. If you do the attack in the air, it's actually kind of hard to consistently hit him while grappling to him in the air. That's more of just a random lucky hit to take whenever you get the chance. When you land at him, you're going to want to get in 1 hit. Past that, it's a little risky. It depends on what attack he's going to be doing. Sometimes his hitbox is a little bit weird. He'll miss you, you'll miss him. Now, this is the Sculpture Fire Barrage. You can run in between these. They have kind of tight hitboxes. It's tough. You can dodge forward through all of them. It actually is timed to where you can do that, but unless you're playing in slow-mo, it's kind of hard. You want to run so that you're going to be creating an X in the path with the sculpture. You don't want to run just slightly perpendicular to it. You need to perfectly intersect it, like a right angle, essentially, so that it will miss you. If you don't do that, the homing on it can hit you. You can deflect them, but you're going to take chip damage, and you're going to get pushed back a lot and hurt. The umbrella can very safely deflect and block them. If you're not on Charmless, you can just hold the block for any of his fire attacks, really. If you're on Charmless, you're going to want to use it to deflect instead. You can deflect with the umbrella. This hand attack can actually hit you, but it's got weird hitboxes. This is kind of a general thing with him. He also has this punch right here. There are a few like this. This one, though, will be followed up with a fire slam down. You want to dodge through that or run around him to the side. If he hits with it, he can do this follow-up combo, but I rarely ever see it. This is a different punch that kind of staggers him if you deflect it. You can sometimes get hits in after these if you want to go for it, which can be pretty handy. This is yet another jump up, slam down. Again, running away, jumping up, and grappling to him is the safest, most consistent way to handle it. If you're right at where he lands, you're going to get caught in the explosion and hurt pretty badly. Every now and then, you'll break a threshold and sort of like stagger him. During that, he'll look to the side and you can hit him pretty hard. I'll get to show off later, but as is mentioned in other parts, you can use the Malcontent finger whistle 3 times during the fight. You can technically use it more than that, but it will have no effect. The 3 times, though, it will stun him. When he enters Phase 3, he will start creating an arena of fire. When he does it, you want to jump the first thing, which is a sweep. So jump this, duck under, and then you need to jump the last one, which is slightly delayed. If you're right up against him, the whip in his hand can actually hit you while you're in the air. This is when he does this double charge sweep. You want to jump over this. Here I'm showing off Malcontent. You can use it to stun him. There is a lore reason, seemingly, why Malcontent works on him. If you haven't figured out who this is yet, I'll get into that in a bit. There is alternate dialogue you can get for this fight that will tell you immediately who this is, but you probably should know already. Mention of the Flames of Hatred, the Demon of Hatred. It looks like a big orangutan that's on fire. It's firing sculptures. It's missing an arm, which has turned to fire. So, just should be obvious, this is the sculptor. Now, on the 3rd stun, he'll actually slam in front of himself. This is a pretty standard thing amongst various enemies. Guardian Ape is like this too. As such, when he does that slam down, he can hit you. You also want to be careful. The fire on the ground can burn you, so if you're standing in it, you'll start getting burned. This is a major pain for no hit, no damage. You have to actually make sure you're never near those. If you stand in them at all, you're going to take damage. You can run over them, though. As long as you're moving very fast, you won't actually take the fire damage. I don't know why, but that's how fire on the ground works in this game. Kind of like if you run across burning coals. I guess that's sort of the concept there. So that is the fight normally. Here is the memory of the Demon of Hatred, or Hatred Demon, or Demon of Resentment. You get some lapis lazuli from it, so there is a pretty good reason to fight it. You get the attack power, you get some additional stuff, you get the lapis so you can make some upgrades. Here is the fight, no hit, no damage, new game +7 Charmless Demon Bell, done by me, Tolvo. I have this as its own video out already. This was quite a trial to get through. Lady Butterfly was still more frustrating, but her fight is far more short. I probably spent more time on this collectively, and it wasn't really fun. Demon of Hatred has some problems with unavoidable attacks, some weird timings, some issues with hitboxes. It's not ideal. On New Game, it's not a big issue. It's really only when you're doing these sorts of ridiculous challenge runs that are super precise, that require top of the world like play to get going and to succeed at. That's when some of these problems become more of an issue. Like grappling to him and him doing a fire attack as I was flying towards him. When you're up in the air grappling, you can't do anything except attack. That's it. Or you can grapple again. There's no other grapple objects here. Just the Demon of Hatred. That was a problem. It didn't happen too often, thankfully. You have to deflect every stomp, make sure you have all of the timing right, make sure you don't get hit by any ground pounds, can't get touched by any fire. You have to dodge or run around all of the flaming sculptures. You've got to dodge through or run away from all the fireballs. dodge through or jump every explosion. It's a nightmare. And it's such a long fight. Even with 96 attack power I think I was at here, it's a very long fight. It's very unpleasant. And as you can see, I have to even make sure I dodge those fireballs, because those can hit you as you're running to them. You have to dodge at the end to get past. It's so frustrating. That is one phase down, but the phases after will take longer, because he spends a lot more time putting down fire patches, sprinting and running around, doing sweeps, doing the sculpture fireballs. And this is done. I'm not doing this sword only yet. I'm going to do that at some point. I plan to. I just needed a break. This was the final one I needed. As far as I know, I haven't seen anybody else do all mini bosses and all bosses New Game Plus 7. Charmless Demon Bell, no hit, no damage. So as far as I know, this was like the world first of all of them completed. This was not the world first for all bosses though. As far as I know, that goes to the gamer eyes. I've seen other people post clips, but a lot of them disappear. I've seen a few that were obviously cheating and eventually got taken down and the people kind of left. Which I don't want to have anyone harassed, but I just don't want people posting videos of them cheating while claiming they aren't. An important thing I do with these videos, I show at the end the items I have. I show the skill gain from the boss, or sen gain if that's available from the enemy. I show that, you can see in the bottom left I have the icons. I go on my menu, I look at my remnants and memories, I look at the demon bell, I show I haven't used any gourds. There are ways to edit around this, but I try to make sure that I have some sort of particle on screen so that you can see I'm not editing around it. Because when the pause menu opens and closes, there's actually a little bit of transparency. There's still ways to edit around this. No matter what, there's always going to be ways for people to cheat. But I put in so many things that if I wanted to cheat, I'm making it so much more harder for myself to edit that. And frankly, editing at that point would be more impressive than these fights I'm doing. But that's a pretty common one I've caught people with, is people not showing sen gain, and then when they accidentally do in the video, noticing, oh hey, this is New Game Plus 3, this isn't New Game Plus 7. Now, as I've found in testing, Charmless actually gives a percentage buff to enemies. They have a lot more damage and health. Or they have at least a lot more damage. I haven't got to test all of the health and everything. Demon Bell doesn't do too much here. It's mostly a formality at this difficulty level. It's hard to tell if there's even like another pixel of health missing from an attack when you have Demon Bell active. It appears like it's a flat buff. It does a lot in early new game cycles, but not so much at this point. Still, for the sake of it, activated, just in case. For this fight, you're going to want to use a lot of running around if you can to get behind. If you want to be more consistent and make sure that nothing happens where you're going to get just tagged or clipped as you're fighting it, I like to fight him head on for the most part. Stick in his face. That's typically how I like to fight most bosses, is hug their face. Face hug them, I usually call it. Fittingly. When you do that, you just have to deflect and time everything. You're not going to have as many issues where something random happened that you have to adapt to. This is one of the more dangerous ones. I'm actually changing the direction I'm running every now and then to make sure I'm at like a right angle to them in the direction I'm running so that I will perfectly dodge it. For phase 3, this is where I wanted to just kind of get as much damage as quickly as possible. You actually won't have enough Divine Confetti to kill him. You'll have to space it out. You can actually use 6 Divine Confettis in a fight. Because the idol is right there, you can use the Divine Confetti and then sit down and rest and then run in and fight him. You'll still have the buff on your blade and you'll have the 5 renewed. I didn't do that because it felt pretty cheesy for like a challenge video. And I didn't even really like that I was using Divine Confetti anyway. So I opted to just use the 5. I used Malcontent too. At this difficulty level, it's incredibly hard to use the axe cheese on him. You have to have very high attack power. You have to be really buffed. And you have to time it just right and use Malcontent to stun him to get that axe cheese to work. You've really got to Tanto. And I'm not sure if Tanto is allowed for no hit, no damage or not. It's effectively just having your health. But I don't know if it counts as damaging yourself or not. And you can't get hit anyway, so it really has no drawbacks. Because if you get hit, you have to reset. Now, as you can see, the fight is almost over. If you want this without me voicing over it, I have the fight itself in the playlist for No Hit, No Damage, New Game Plus 7, Charmless Demon Bell. So if you want that without my dumb voice over it, you can go watch that there and many of the other fights, things I've added to it. I put on various tough enemies. The final bosses are in there. You can find the final bosses in there. You can find various enemies like Senpo Dual Blades, that was world first. White Monkey, world first for the Wall Ghosts. That doesn't really matter much to anybody. World first for Sword Only and just in general, the Carp Attendant. Also here, just again, showing off everything. So you're going to see every item in the game and every memory. If you paused at any point, just a heads up, you're going to see spoilers for the final boss. Also, here I did Ashen Across to show that was how the sculptor's Shiro was canceled originally, was purged, was Ishin cutting off the sculptor's arm with Ashen Across. His Ashen Across is an actual cross, though. Ours is like a fake one. You get to see it a bit in like the manga. You also get to see Ichimonji double. Up here is still the Merchant, the mob memorial. Nothing's really changed. He just has the endgame stuff that the other merchants got. But we can go back here and talk to the priestess lady.
なんとなくは分かってるんだろう。あの片腕の鬼が元は何者だったのか。いや。そうかい。その方がいいかもしれないね。何の因果か。塩素の炎に焼かれ、鬼となり苦しむ者がいた。あんたはそれを終わらせた。
Sort of mention here, there is that alternate dialogue that happens depending on a different thing that you can do. You have to do Lady Butterfly, you have to ask him what he saw in the flames, you have to get an additional eavesdrop with him after you've beaten Owl and lit the incense. Now, it's mentioned on the memory in Revenant, he didn't become a true Shura. The Shura was actually cancelled when Ishin cut off his arm, so he couldn't become a true one. He lost that capability. It mentions he is someone who cannot fully become a Shura anymore. Now, to get that additional dialogue, what you have to do, as I mentioned, fight Lady Butterfly. You have to kill her, ask him what he saw afterwards, and he'll tell you he saw the flames of hatred. You have to get an eavesdrop on him and Emma talking. You have to get the eavesdrop, I believe, after you have defeated Owl. It should be after you light the incense too. The incense might not be necessary, but it's a trigger sometimes for things. When you get that eavesdrop, you then need to go and talk to him, and you can talk to Emma too. Then you need to rest and have Emma leave and then talk to him. If you're doing purification, you actually can't get this dialogue. You need to do it before starting purification. When you've gotten him to tell you that he wants you to be the one that kills him in the end, that's when you know you're prepared. This gate is still closed. You can't go through this. You can't go to much of the outskirts really anymore. You can out of bounds out of here, and enemies will spawn, but you're not really supposed to. Now, for what the memory said, for those who couldn't read it right away, the gist of it is the memory says, the one-armed demon prowled the battlefield consumed by the flames of deepest resentment. For what the remnant for the hatred demon, or demon of hatred, says, it says, a man who failed to become Shura instead became a vessel for the flames of hatred. As fate would have it, he was bound stubbornly to this world. It wasn't until he became a demon that he was finally able to depart for the next. So in a moment, I'm going to be showing the prerequisites to get the Demon of Hatred recognized dialogue for the fight. I want to mention Kalina Chung was the one who reminded me to bring up that Lady Butterfly needs to be dead, and you need to ask the sculptor what he saw in the fire. This is something I knew, but I forgot that it was a prerequisite because I always do it every time I arrive there. Also, with the sculptor dead, the area is rather silent, with Hanbei dead as well. Only the info broker is around. And we have taken over the role of the sculptor. To mention, he was known as orangutan. Orangutan are actually a form of, I believe they're apes. But I know they actually make tools. They can watch humans and learn how to make tools like spears and bowls. So perhaps a little bit of a reference here to some real-world biology. Now to show off the prerequisites, you're going to need to give him a bunch of tea. I think it might be all of the tea. And again, you'll get this after killing Owl. This is when you can go through and eavesdrop on him. Possibly it can be done sooner, but it seemed like Owl was always the thing that was needed to get this after giving him the sake. Go along back here, and you're going to eavesdrop them similar to how you have many times.
狼殿もいらしたのですね。私は仏を掘る音を聞くのが好きで、時折ここを訪ねるのです。ではまた。
さんも来たのか。わしは仏を掘るので忙しいんじゃがな。ではな、また久しくらいなら貸してやろう。お前さん。なんだ。お前さんが切ってくれ。何のことだ。とぼけやがって。あの子に切らせるのはちと忍びに頼む。わしが惚れるの気のない。ではな、また。
And here will be the alternate dialogue. I don't need to talk much for this.
あんた、また生き残ったのかい。なんとなくはわかってるんだろう。あの片腕の鬼が元は何者だったのか。
あ
あ。だったら諸月カエルじゃないよ。ずっと仏を掘り続けてなお怨嗟の炎に焼かれ鬼となり苦しむはあやつの自業因果なのさ。あんたはそれを終わらせた。送ったんだよ。あやつもきっと感謝しているさね。あんた覚えておきな。怨嗟はもう積もる先を失った。戦が続けば世はもっとひどいことになるだろう。だからってあんたが代わりになることはないんだよ。さあ、もうお行き。あんたにはあんたのお役目がなすべきことがあるんだろう。
Welcome to the lore and history section of this episode of Sekiro. I've put out a chunk here where I'm going to put slow motion footage in the background that was taken using FPS Unlocker just to get some cinematic footage to talk over. There will probably be music playing right here, music that will hopefully be very fitting. I might have to kind of edit something together a little bit myself from something already existing. There is a lot to cover with the Demon of Hatred. I kind of wanted to start with something that is less discussed in the community. I have not seen it mentioned at all anywhere. It's possible someone has. If anyone's going to notice it, my guess would be that it would be found already in the Chinese, maybe Japanese communities for Sekiro. And if there's Indian communities, they might know it too. In general, East Asian communities might know it more, because it's a part of history they would know more. So regarding the Demon of Hatred, and in general a thing in Sekiro is the missing left arms. There are a decent number of characters like that. There is the hidden arms of the Lone Shadows. They actually do have both arms, they just hide the left arm. The Demon of Hatred and Sculptor are missing their left arm. Sekiro loses his. Even the Divine Dragon, the Sakura Dragon, is missing the left arm. So I believe this might be rooted in Zen Buddhism. I think it might be related to the story of, and I apologize if I pronounce these names wrong. I'm doing my best in looking up from Chinese and Indian sources on how to pronounce them. Dazu Huika and Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma, Dazu Huika, or Huika. That's how I've heard it pronounced when I look it up being spoken by monks. I don't speak any form of Chinese. I'm doing my best, and I do apologize. I'm fine with getting corrections on that. I understand. So to get into more of the interesting things I haven't really seen discussed too much, there is the story of Huika and Bodhidharma. I hope I'm pronouncing those names correctly. Huika was known as Shen Kuang, or Shinko in Japanese. And then Huika, the Japanese version of that name, I believe would be Eka. So as the story goes, Bodhidharma was living in isolation. He was meditating. He had been kind of disillusioned with a lot of the regional people in power. He felt they weren't properly respecting Buddhism and weren't following the path correctly. Bodhidharma is the first patriarch of Zen Buddhism. Now, Shen Kuang showed up seeking enlightenment, seeking the path to studying Buddhism and becoming more pure of mind. Now, Bodhidharma didn't really want to teach anyone. He really wanted to be isolated. He had kind of seemingly given up on that concept that anyone would be willing to follow the path, that anyone had what it takes, that anyone was really true to the path of Buddhism, to the path of Buddha. So as the story goes, and there's many variations on it, I'm not sure which one is really the oldest. The essentials are that Shen Kuang stood outside in the snow. He stood out there showing his resolve. He stayed out all night. He began to freeze. He did not waver at any period as the story goes. When morning came, Bodhidharma turned and asked, "You've been standing in the snow a long time. What is it you're looking for?" Shen Kuang said, "I have a request. Please have mercy on me and show me the true Buddhist teachings." Bodhidharma replied, "One seeks Buddhist teachings at the risk of one's life. It is a waste of time for an ignorant person of little virtue to carelessly and conceitedly seek the teachings of Buddha." To show his resolve even further, Shen Kuang took a sword and cut his arm off at the elbow. He then gave it to Bodhidharma. This showed Bodhidharma that Shen Kuang was a person capable of taking in his teachings, and took him in as a disciple. To note, Huika, or Shen Kuang, cutting off his arm is seen as a sign of virtue, of just how virtuous he was, that he would sacrifice his body that way, that he would give up that part of himself, that what his focus was upon was learning the teachings and reaching true enlightenment. And he went on to become the second patriarch of the Zen Buddhist order. Now, to also talk a little bit more about Bodhidharma, he was the first patriarch of Zen Buddhism. He is seen as having a direct line through his lineage to the Buddha. I don't want to actually try to pronounce his name right away. I don't want to screw it up for a figure that is considered so sacred, which I hope that's alright. Bodhidharma was known to be meditating with a sort of wall gazing. That's the translation I've seen. I'm not sure that they entirely know what it meant. Seemingly, he would sit there and meditate staring at a wall. He would do it for a very long period of time. In the stories, when he met with Shen Kuang, It is said that he was wall-gazing at the time and would not divert his attention while Shen Kuang stood out in the snow freezing. Now, as far as I've seen, in Zen Buddhism, they don't say that you actually stare at a wall. That wall gazing is more of like a metaphorical thing. The walls of your mind, walls that you are not physically seeing. They don't state that you actually need to sit in front of a wall to do it. But in a lot of artwork and when they talk about the story of Bodhidharma, they usually depict him actually staring at a wall. Usually him sitting in a cave staring at the walls of the cave. Now, something along with these concepts to understand, the thing about the sculptor in Sekiro, getting back into more of the game lore, the sculptor was turning into a Shura. Seemingly this happened right after Kingfisher, his shinobi partner, was killed and eaten by the Guardian Ape. You find her finger in the Guardian Ape's belly. Her finger had a sort of groove in it, and she wore a ring, which was malcontent, that when she whistled through it, would play a haunting tune. This is the thing that causes fear and pain to evil spirits, and ease the mind of the sculptor. This is already an early enough hint that there is some sort of evil within him. Now, when you go through Sekiro, there are actually some very important item descriptions you might miss. They're for things that seem rather inconsequential. When you're upgrading your skills to better fight enemies, you might not realize it at first, there's a lot of descriptions full of lore. You might not look at them too closely when you select these skills for getting more emblems, but they're actually called the Karma skills. When you read through them, they give away little bits of information about how karma works in the world of Sekiro. It shows that as you kill, the sort of negative karma, the negative energy, is affecting you. It actually doesn't matter what's in your heart as you kill. It's the fact that you are killing that is the issue at hand here. And the sculptor is a well-accomplished shinobi. As you kill more and more, you turn more and more. It's actually mentioned that Isshin is somebody who would be very susceptible to the Shura if he wasn't so focused, if he didn't meditate, if basically he wasn't so pure of mind on what he's doing. And to mention, Isshin isn't really a good guy. When you read the actual descriptions of things and what he's done, he's more, as I mentioned, comparable to Oda Nobunaga. He's a very interesting person. He's likable to be around, but quite evil? He's killed a lot of people, and his plan was to conquer Japan until he got too old for it. So additionally, when looking at skills, there's even further things to find. To mention, when you have gotten your prosthetic tools and have a skill point, the sculptor, Sekijo, gives you the prosthetic esoteric text. This teaches you prosthetic skills. With it, you can learn things like Fang and Blade, you can learn Grapple Attack. Interestingly, this is where the Nightjar skills are found. It might just seem like they put them there because Shinobi would end up too full. It has owl stuff in there, it has Mikiri, it has some pretty general useful things in there. So maybe things got moved to the prosthetic text. But to mention, the Nightjar, they use Shuriken, which that's pretty standard for Shinobi. The sort of spinning blade attack they do and how they run and kind of move in an arcing, swinging motion towards a target. That's how the Axe of the Monkey works, the loaded axe prosthetic tool that you use in game. As is mentioned, that is the weapon of Sekijo, the sculptor. He is orangutan. Monkey, orangutan, ape. Historically, they didn't make as much distinctions between these things. Again, he was found near Guardian Ape's watering hole. That was kind of the area he liked to be in. That was where him and Kingfisher hung out a lot. It's also where you find some Nightjar. And it was always mysterious why they're there. It's known as a valley, the Bodhisattva Valley, as a place that shinobi like to go where they can be free. Now, it's interesting that The Nightjar skills are found in the prosthetic text that gives the teachings of the sculptor. It's been posited, even by me, that Owl taught the Nightjar, and he still might have. Their gear kind of resembles his in regards to the feathers, but the way they fight resembles a bit more of Sekiro. They don't actually even use the same kind of shuriken as Owl. Theirs are designed to spin in the air when thrown, whereas Owl's are more of like your classic star style, you'd call it. But I find it just very interesting that there is this relation there. And don't forget, Sekiro, after he had his arm cut off to prevent him from going Shura, became employed by Ishin of the Ashina clan. He served under Ishin then as one of his shinobi, possibly a higher up or member of the Nightjar. To note, the Mushin text that you get, which are the final skills of the game, is designed to be incomplete so that other people can complete it. Ishin was not actually done perfecting all forms of combat before he died. The idea is that there is no end to where one can ascend. There are always more skills, there's always more to learn. Sekiro is all about people fighting and learning from each other and learning from the fight. I have talked about it a bit, but Mushin is no mind. It is a teaching of Buddhism. During the Sengoku Jidai, a lot of warriors in Japan who were Buddhist had a big focus on Mushin. It was seen as a sort of ultimate technique to be able to just on reflexes alone fight. You don't think, you simply act. Some people are going to notice some similarities with something, and yes, that's probably where Ultra Instinct in Dragon Ball comes from. It's probably based on this concept as well as the pun that it is based upon. More of an animation thing I wanted to bring up here. The Demon of Hatred seems to actually move how Sekiro should have in combat. When he does his running sweep along the ground, it's a bit similar of a motion of leaning and hunching down with that arm back or forward, dragging it along the ground. That is what you do with the axe when you use it. That is also how the Nightjar fight, when they do their like running forward, charging, bringing their arm around, spinning blade attack, which they like to light on fire, by the way. I still find that just a neat little detail that seemingly he is fighting how Sekiro would. He's using the firearm like his prosthetic tools. He's throwing the fireballs from it, similar to how we do the shuriken throw with the arm. The one that's a bit different is the whip. We don't have a whip prosthetic. That would have been pretty cool, although that I guess could be like an extension of the grappling hook. So the grappling hook could be what that whip is kind of like and replacing. But I find that really interesting that the Demon of Hatred fight has those similarities to it. I'm also going to put up on screen the sculptor right about here. I want to point out a little thing. So people notice that the sculptor is very hairy. That's why he got the name orangutan. But I also want to point out, if you look at his wrists and hands, and also his ankles and feet, he really does have very ape-like features. He looks genuinely like an ape man. Just, also drunk. Another thing I wanted to bring up were the shoujo, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that right. I have just seen how it is spelled. I don't actually know how to pronounce accents. I'm very dumb in some ways, I'm sorry. This is something that Rock Paper Shotgun actually did an article on Sekiro talking about the yokai and things from Japanese culture and history that are referenced in the game. They actually have gotten more things in that than most lore YouTubers have on Sekiro. It's kind of embarrassing for like the lore community, but they mention shoujo, they talk about various things, the Azura, they talk about Demon of Hatred. One thing they don't really seem to connect is that the shoujo design seems to be what the design of the Demon of Hatred was based upon. The artwork of shoujo, which is a sort of like rice wine, like sake kami, and it's a play also by Kamparu Zenchiku, or formerly known as Shichiro Ujinobu. They were born in 1405, died around 1470, Nara, Japan. They were a no actor and playwright. They're the one who wrote the play and also acted in it. It's one of their most famous works, and I just wanted to bring that up, that's where this actually comes more so from and why that story has persisted. Now, it's mentioned the shoujo are a sort of like ocean dweller, sea dweller. They talk about how the shoujo resembles an orangutan and is often drunk and likes to dance. It's pretty fitting for the sculptor. Almost everything in Sekiro has a real historical background or inspiration. I say real historical here because I know it's a kami, a drunken kami that looks like an orangutan, but it's history that this story existed, it's history that the play existed. And it's something that is significant to Japan, to Japan's history of drama. There is significance there, those things do matter. There's even more I would like to discuss, but this episode has gotten ridiculously long. I'm going to have to talk more in other episodes about these things. Something else to also mention, there is a sort of creature called like a Xianjian or Xinshin, or something along those lines. I'm not sure the exact pronunciation. Spelled with an X. It's a type of orangutan that can see the future. There's legends of people in China using orangutan blood to dye clothing, though I've not seen any actual historical evidence that that happened. There are stories surrounding the orangutans being able to see the future and predict things, but it's hard to find the sources on that. There is Huinanzi. I'll put up the text right here, the name of it. But I haven't been able to find it online, and it's a bit expensive to buy a book version of it. So I'll see if I can somehow find a way to get my hands on it. I can't always link every source I use in the video, because I might not be able to share it legally. Though usually I can actually look at them legally, you just can't redistribute it. But I hope that's been enough for this episode. I'm sorry this has been so long. I just had a lot to unload about this. I'll go into it further and further in the future. This has been Tolvo doing the Sekiro historical lore through. And I also, with this fight, did finish the no hit, no damage New Game Plus 7 Charmless Demon Bell series. I've done many of them sword only. I'm doing no upgrades, doing jump kick only kill, working on the full no hit, no damage New Game Plus 7 Charmless Demon Bell speedrun. I've been speedrunning the game. You can find those in my other playlists if you want. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and have a nice time, everybody. Bye-bye.